sense, but in a broader sense, this is the part of the culture which is really intertwined in the life of the Georgians, everyday life of the Georgians. So yes, and it's my subjective opinion that this is the wine is about the people and experience. Well, and the third most important thing is the the recent new history of Georgian wine, which was after it was during Soviet period and then after the Soviet period. Well, and this was the most difficult era of history for Georgian wine because, as you know, uh, during the last century, in the 20th century, this was the biggest shift in the winemaking industry. Whatever happened in the recent 100 years in terms of promotion, awareness building, and the development of the wine industry worldwide, we were kind of lagging behind because we had Iron Curtain towards the Western countries, and it was all locked down, and we were only within the Soviet Union region, and and because of the fact that the Soviets prohibited the first, it was the prohibition of the private ownership that was first, and it was planned economy, and the third was it was volume driven industry. So they kept the varieties, only the varieties which were good for the industry, which were good for the volumes. Well, these were the great varieties which are indigenous Georgian varieties, but they kind of forgot and did not develop all other great varieties which were known as to be 500 types. So during Soviet period, we were only left with five or basically like six, not more, of the great varieties. But out of the six, two big great varieties were dominant, which still is the case in today's Georgia. But to compare, now we have around more than 30 great varieties, which are also present in the commercial in the commerce of the wine industry. So during Soviet times, it was only like two or three varieties which were dominant. Now we have 30, 35, but out of 500, which is still a small. It's a small number. But the revival, as we call it, the revival of in the recent years, it started in about 10, 12 years ago. As I mentioned, because the winemaking is a culture, it's a part of the culture of Georgians. Almost everyone in Georgia is making wine for their own consumption. It was during Soviet times, before that, after that, and I mean, basically all Georgian. Let's say, I mean, I'm kind of exaggerating a little bit, but every Georgian is a winemaker. And in 10 years ago, I mean, these people who are making wines for their own consumption decided to commercialize. I mean, not commercialize. I'm not in industry. I'm not talking about the industrialization, but just to come out to the market. They started to bottle their wines, do the labels, and kind of show their own philosophy. And because and due to the fact that almost all the Georgians were having kveveries in their own winery, small winery we call Marani. Marani is the name of the winery, but in Georgian. So every Georgian has its own Marani. So in Maranis, their kveveries, the clay vessels, and everyone who were making wines for their own consumption started to show their wines to the public. So that started like 10, 12 years ago. And I mean, just to give you some kind of figures about the development of this movement. what we call a small wineries or a natural wine movement, if you want to say, if you want to call it so, an amber wine movement. Amber wine, well, I'll get back to that a little bit later on. In 10 years ago, we had like about 5, 6 Maranis, small wineries who came out to the scene. And today we have over 200 of them. I mean, small Maranis who have, I mean, small wineries who have their own Kvevri winemaking and have their own philosophy. And these were the guys who started to develop and reinvent and revive the old forgotten grape varieties. And it's because thanks to them that we have such growing diversity right now. 500 now we have, as I said, like more than 30 of them, which is a good number in 10 years, in 12 years. And these were the guys who were kind of promoting and they're locomotives of this movement. And well, and the amber wine, what we, which is the kind of a main phenomenon in Georgian winemaking, this style of wine was the wine which we have been making for all these millennia. We were the skin contact was very important in the winemaking method, even with the white wines. Well, we all know that the red wines are made with the skin contact and because of the color and extraction and the tannins and texture. But it was the same approach to the white wines. This was kind of a beginning of, I would like to say that it's not the beginning, it's kind of coming back to the traditions, which started 10, 15 years ago.
I wanted to ask, many people do associate Georgia with amber wines, with skin contact wines, and they associate Georgia with Kvevri wines. Can you just briefly explain the numbers here? So what's the percentage of wines in Georgia that's actually either amber wine or Kvevri wine? And of course, then there's also the natural wine category. So
you know what, it's very difficult to have the statistics because of two reasons. Amber wine is not an official category at the moment. I'll get back to that a little bit later on, and also the natural wine as well. So, I mean, as an agency, as a national wine agency, we have the statistics, official statistics. And in the statistics, we don't have a definition of natural wine. We don't have a definition of Kvevri made wine, and we don't have a definition of amber wine. So it's white, red, or rosé, like these three categories. But recently, I mean, this year, like 3 weeks ago, in OIV, the amber wine category was defined, and it's acknowledged as a category. It's not a Georgian category, but it's one of the styles already. Skin contact whites, made in Kvevri on a steel or a stainless steel tanks. It's the skin contact whites were made with the long maceration. But I mean, as empirically, I have the figures that Kvevri made wines represent about 5% of our total production, and around 6 or 7% of the total export. And this also includes the big wineries as well, because the recent trend was so growing for the amber wines and the Kvevri made amber wines that the big wineries also developed the line of the amber wines as well, made in Kvevri.
What would an average Georgian drink? Would it be
average
or not really?
Well, Georgia is a white wine drinker. In a majority of Georgians drink white wines, which includes also amber wines as well. Amber wine, well, I'll tell you a little bit of kind of a structure of the country in terms of winemaking. We have 10 regions of winemaking, and the biggest one is Kakheti, which is Eastern Georgia. and today it makes around more than 90% of total harvest of the grapes, and respectively more than 90% of the winemaking is based in Kakheti, eastern part of Georgia. And Kakheti is known for the amber wines, and the dominant grapes of Georgia is Katsiteli for the white grapes and Saperavi for the red grapes. They also dominate the total harvest and total production, and they make up to also 90% of that. The rest comes for the other regions. Yeah. After Kakheti, we have Imereti, the western part, Katli, the central west, and the northwest, which is known for its semi-sweet style of wines and the different varieties. But there are a number of, to tell you the figure, right now we have more than 900 wineries, including big and small and natural and everywhere, just all the structure of the wineries. And and the total export, for example, last year was over 90 million bottles totally, and 20%, 20 wineries make 80% of the whole export.
Okay.
Yeah, and yes, I mean, and because Kakheti is kind of the place where the amber wine and the Kvevri wines are kind of dominating as well. In recent years, Imereti and Western part has also developed in that regard. But the long maceration whites is produced basically in Kakheti. To tell you the difference, for example, in Kakheti, the Kakhetian style is to leave the wines on the skins, on the maceration for 6 months in February, and total 100% of skins and stems. Whereas for example, in Imereti, it's around 20 or 30% of skins only, and the maceration would last 2 to 3 months. And the wines in Imereti, just to generally characterize the wines from Imereti, from the western part, is with less tannins, is more fresh and vibrant, with high acidity. Whereas in Kakheti, is stronger tannins, stronger tannic structure, and more flavor in a Kakhetian style of wine.
Ellen, I want to switch to you just a little bit. In Slovenia, our tourist board doesn't have wine tours as such, but we are getting more and more individuals or private companies, private agencies who are doing smaller wine tours around the country. How is that in Georgia? Do you see more focused wine tours in the country?
Well, in the previous question, I mentioned the press and fam trips, which are our department organizing, and within these trips, we to say like from 10 of the trips, we do a wine tour in 9 of them. Okay. So it means that we always try to include in the press trip program the wine tours, so that the people who are coming to Georgia get to know it really well, and know that wine is really one of the most important, to say, tradition and part of our biggest culture.
Go ahead, sorry.
I should also mention that the private sector and the travel agencies and travel companies who are in Georgia, they are also having these wine tours, and they are providing those tours for the visitors, for the tourists, and even for the Georgian citizens. So I think that everyone can have this tour if they wish for.
What is your go-to Georgian wine and Georgian dish, for that matter?
Well, for me, the best traditional dish is khingali, as most of Georgians. I think Irakli will agree with me, and khachapuri also. And both of them, I think, that are so unique, and that they have even encouraged the restaurateurs from the different countries to open the Georgian restaurants in their countries, and to offer the citizens Georgian gastronomical specialties. And for example, I can say that in Sweden, there is one Georgian restaurant, which where more than 80% of visitors are the citizens of the town. And it gives us courage that and confidence that Georgian cuisine and gastronomy is really, really so unique and interesting, not only for Georgians, but for the whole world.
Now, a lot of people, I'm sure, have heard at least of khachapuri. Can you just explain briefly what's a hingali and what's a khachapuri?
To say easily, hingali is kind of a dumplings of Georgian. And khachapuri is kind of a bread, to say roughly, bread with the cheese. It's baked in the oven, and it's really delicious. You should trust us.
I'll add to that. Khinkali is a union of three foods. It's soup, it's meat, and bread, all in one, in a dumpling.
Yeah.
So it's juicy meat wrapped with the dough.
Irakli, how do you see interest in Georgian wines rising abroad? It feels that just in the recent year, the demand has really soared.
Yes, exactly. Yes, that's due to. I mean, at the same time, now I would like to mention that National Wine Agency has started to promote heavily Georgian wines since 2013, and we had kind of a strategy to find the potential markets where we had the opportunity to grow. And we identified 5 markets then, and now we are operating on 7 markets where we have targeted marketing campaigns all through the year, which includes United Kingdom, United States, Japan, China, Poland, Germany, and Baltic states. And we work through the Masters of Wine and through their marketing resources which they have, and and it's kind of building gradually, and the interest is there because this diversification of the producers have grown recently, really on rapid pace. So, and there's a lot of interest because of the diversity of the wines as well, and because it's like it's a novelty now to the world. Although we say that, and we are the old winemaking nation, but we were not known to the world because of the Soviet Union, and because of the Iron Curtain, and we lost, as I said before, we lost the whole era, the whole maybe 50, 70 years. So we were not known to the world, and now we're coming back. We were the old nation, but we're kind of in the beginning of development of the markets, if you want to say so. So we are now in the process for about 30 years only, because Soviet Union collapsed in early 90s, and it was the beginning of our industry. The revival of the industry started in 1994, 95. So we're kind of young but old country. It's kind of combined together.
Speaking of markets, Elaine, what is Georgian main market when it comes to tourists? Who is the main group? Which nation?
I cannot say just one nation. There are some European countries. There are, of course, the Gulf countries. There is also Israel and the far destinations such as USA, China, and Japan.
Irakli, I have to briefly touch on Slovenian winemakers as well, because it seemed they have a special bond with Georgia, a lot of them. Yeah. Some of our greats like Joško Grauner openly say they got their inspiration from Georgia. What is it do you feel that they take from you? What's the main inspiration? Is it the process itself? Is it the kveveris? because some of them also import the kvebris back home.
Yeah.
Or just the long history and the inspiring landscape that pulls you in as a winemaker?
I would say it's all together, but the main thing is this new approach. I mean, it's an old method to make white grapes with the long maceration, but it was not known to the world. I mean, it was not. It wasn't widely spread. It was only kept in Georgia. So that, I think that's the main inspiration, because it's a novelty to make white grapes as all the winemakers make the red wine. It's we have certain approaches to come up with the slogans. For example, in China or in Hong Kong, we use to characterize the amber wine for the wine lovers who are first time drinking this style of wines. We say that this is it's a new red wine because of the texture, because of the structure. So I think the main attraction and main inspiration is the new approach of making white wines, which is the long skin maceration. And as you know, the skins are contributing more than 80% of the flavor. So it's very, very rich in flavor, and it's kind of it's very rare to have this in the white wines, because when the white wines are made in a classic way, it's fresh, it's aromatic, but they lack this richness. I'm not saying that it's better. It's another style of wine. You cannot compare the whites and amber wines, because these are two different things. It's like comparing orange and pear. It's just two different things. But it's a new approach of making white wines, making wines with the white grapes. So I think that's and it gives you a lot of opportunity to to perform your art of winemaking while making these kind of wines.
I will interject here and ask our viewers, if any of you has any questions, please send them in our comment section for our guests to reply. And I already have one question for Hélène. It's from Peter Bleeker. He's asking what we could really use is some marketing campaign for traveling to Georgia here in the Netherlands and Belgium. Hélène, is something like this planned for the near future?
Did I get right that they are asking if we have any kind of marketing strategy for the Netherlands?
If you have any marketing campaign in the Netherlands and in Belgium?
In Belgium, I think we did last year before the pandemic. We even had to participate in the travel fair there, but this COVID-19 has started and we had to interrupt the traveling in there. And in Netherlands, we did not had any of the certain and direct campaigns yet, but I hope that it will be in our future plans.
Thank you. Irakli, what would you say was instrumental in getting Georgian wine get bigger exposure? Was it marketing, like target marketing? Was it more of a word of mouth? Or, has the world just gotten more interested in more exotic wine regions? Or maybe some big name restaurants started using it, like Noma, I'm sure had a few Georgian wines.
I mean, generally speaking, it was a new proposal to the wine world. As we spoke before, I mean, it was the three basic propositions we had to the wine circles and wine lover world. It was 8,000 years of history. It was indigenous Georgian grape varieties which were new to the world, and the style of wine, as we say. And the amber wine was our key and locomotive tool to introduce Georgia to the world. This was three unique, let's say, so unique propositions to the world, which we built our promotion and the awareness building campaigns on. And it was something new that the world had to taste, including Kvevri phenomenon as well, obviously. And this is so vibrant and it's so interesting to the world that people are really getting engaged and involved in this, in consumption and in winemaking as well. Like you said, I mean, we have even, I wouldn't say it's an industry, but this craftsmanship of Kvevri making revived due to this growing demand on Kvevris. It was only in recent 10, 12 years. Because this craft was dying out because there was no demand on that. But it was kept in the families from generation to generation. And when the demand started to rise, firstly in the local market, because local wineries have started to buy the Kvevris and to demand for the Kvevris, and then now these guys are exporting Kvevris in different countries of the world, and you have to, for example, you have to line up at least for 2 years if you want to order a Kvevri for your own winemaking.
And you're getting also people from abroad studying the Kvevri making process.
We don't have this institutionalized, we don't have these institutions yet, but there are people coming and talking with the Kvevri makers, and they're getting experiences from them as well. Now we have around five families now all around Georgia who revived this craftsmanship. So, and it was zero. It started from zero 10, 12 years ago.
We have another question for Irakli. It comes from Matic Wines, and he's asking, is there many different clays for Kvevri which affect wine in different way, kind of like French versus American oak? Do you use different clays for Kvevri making?
Well, there is, well, they are, obviously, they are different types of soils. We have three main areas for Kvevri making. One of them is eastern part in Kakheti, and it's the western part, Imereti and Guria as well, which is also in far west. And to tell you like a very general climate in these regions, for example, Kakheti is very dry, western part is getting very subtropical, and Guria is too subtropical as well. And the soil structure is in eastern part is it could be black soil and limestone, whereas in the eastern part it's more clay. It's more clay driven and with high humidity there. And obviously they kind of have their impact on the final winemaking. But it's not it's not impacting on the final taste of the wine. We have to, there's a big argument going on that. There's one group of people who is saying that Kvevri is finally and actually affecting the final taste of the wine. And there's another part who is saying that Kvevri is the perfect vessel only for the long skin maceration.
We have another
which enables to finalize this style of wine with no effect on the final taste. So there's no clear point that whether or not Kvevri is affecting on the final taste or quality.
Another question for you, Irakli, also from Peter. He's asking, what would be your vision for Georgia's future production when it comes to the wine style? Is the strategy to let the market share of Kvevri wines grow further? Until what percentage? And how does this affect the target exporting countries?
Well,
interesting question.
It's very interesting, but you know, I mean, the state strategy of the state is, I mean, as a state, we do not interfere in the final commercialization of the wine industry. We are kind of investing and subsidizing the industry in marketing to build the awareness of Georgian wine worldwide, just to help the industry promote and sell their wines finally. And it depends on the markets itself, the demand from the markets. But our strategy, marketing strategy, let's say so, is Qvevri and amber wine driven. Notwithstanding the fact that these are not the biggest volumes, but we are promoting ourselves as being one of the pioneers of this style of wines. And we are kind of introducing Georgia as this style of wines, which is unique to the world, including the indigenous Georgian varieties in the whole scenario. But I mean, it depends. I mean, right now the situation is like this. For example, the industry in the recent new history of Georgian wine, after 90s, after Soviet Union collapsed, we had our 95% of all our wines exported to Russia before 2006, when we had a big embargo from the Russian side. And after it reopened in 2013, the share of Russia dropped to 60%. And we maintained the share until now. Why? Because the other markets also developed. Before embargo, we had only 10, 12 markets on the export. Now we have more than 50 countries on the export destination for the wine. But still, this is the biggest share that the Russia has now. Russia is good in terms of the wine market, but it's very, very risky and unstable in terms of political stability. It's very risky. So that's why our strategy as a state is to diversify the markets as much as we can. So it has to be diversified and just not to leave any of the markets, including Russia, which is the biggest risk, to be dominant export destination. So this is our final goal. And in this development, then the business have to kind of find their own ways. We are laying the path for the industry, and the industry has to drive on this path. We cannot, we cannot go into the commercialization and marketing of the individual brands on the place, but we're kind of building the path and building the ways, and then you have to drive with your own cars.
Now, Slovenia prides itself of having world's oldest vine, not wine. It's in Maribor. It's called Stara Trta, the old vine. And here's a question from Papuna Imnadze, I'm guessing a Georgian. She's asking, which is the oldest wine in Georgia and where was it found first?
Oldest vine?
She's asking about the wine.
Wine or vine?
Wine. The drink, the liquid.
The liquid.
Yeah, oldest
no,
wine.
I mean, oldest. I mean, we found. I mean, the archaeological finding was the pips in and the sediment in the clay, in the remnants of the clay vessel, which they carbon dated 6,000 years BC, and it wasn't a liquid. It was the remains of the wine. And 2 or 3 years ago, we launched the scientific research, which included international team of the researchers, the scientists from all around the world. And it was the botanists, and it was DNA experts, and all these archaeological professionals. And they finally, when they made the research and they confirmed scientifically And there's a paper, a scientific paper, which is on the internet site of Pennsylvania University, which confirmed that the remains which are found in the world up to date is coming from this territory, and these are the remains of the wine. But it's obviously it's not a liquid, because it would be it's already dried out, and it's just the remains of the pips. And these pips were the cultured and cultivated wine, the cultivated grape pips, which means that it was not, they were not the wild grape pips. They were domesticized and cultivated cultured grape pips, which means that they were used for the fermentation for the wine. And the remains were from tartaric acid, and they made the test in the laboratory, and it was a tartaric acid, which is the remain of the wine as well.
And
so far, these are the remains which the world has up to date, which were found on this territory.
I'm just trying to. What about the vine? Because maybe there was a misunderstanding between wine.
I mean, vine. Today we have there are two places where the vines, as they say, it's from 300 to 400 years old.
Okay.
One of them is in Kakheti, it's in Andali, and it's still it still has the grape, and they produce some very small batch of wines. And there's a very small winemaker in Meskheti, the southern in the southern part of Georgia, which was meant to be, as they say, the origin of the winemaking. And this guy has started. He has a small winery, and he started to make wines from the wild vines and wild grapes, which are still in the area of this region. And as they say, the vines are very thick in the diameter, and obviously they say that it's about 300 years old vines.
I have
very old indigenous grapes.
I have one question from Carolyn Rice. It's actually for me, probably. She's asking, how old is the Slovenian vine? Because she thought Georgia had the oldest still producing vine. So our old vine is around 440 years old. And that is officially the oldest, but we all know how the records go. One more question about the kveveris. How is wine different in small and big kveveri? So it's Matic wines again, and I'm guessing, of course, it's something completely different as when we're talking about oak barrels. Is there any difference when it comes to kveveri, small and big?
Sure, yes. In the practice, the perfect size for fermentation is about 1,200 liters of kvevery, because it gives the space of because during fermentation the skins and the whole remains are rotating, and it gives the perfect space. 1,200 liters is the perfect space for fermentation process. That's the experience what we have. But kveveris could be as large as 3 tons as well. But these are also good for storing the wines. But for fermentation, best kind of size is from 12 to 1,500 liters.
Elaine, just briefly, do Georgians travel to wine regions? Is that a thing? Like, you know, going out for a weekend to have like a wine weekend in the wine region?
Yes, of course. As Irakli mentioned at the beginning, the biggest wine region in Georgia is Kakheti. And a lot of wineries have made small hotels near the wineries. They're wineries, and a lot of people go there for the weekend, and they just taste different. They have different tastings and the degustations of different wines, and they just have fun and also get to know some unusual Georgian wine types. So it's really very common to go to Kakheti region and on the weekends.
What kind of drinkers are Georgians? Are they more into meditation, or are they crazy drinkers? What kind of drinkers are they?
They are more crazy drinkers.
In recent years, I mean, the culture also has really big shift, mostly in the younger generation, because as we all mentioned, I mean, mostly, well, yeah, Georgians are the crazy drinkers, but in the younger generation now, the culture of the wine drinking has changed a lot. Because as we said, we also go out locally for the wine tourism and wine tasting, and also we go abroad as well. So, and this has had a really big impact on changing and shifting the wine drinking culture. For example, it was, I mean, maybe 10, 15 years ago, it was really unusual for Georgian to have a sip of wine for a glass of two. If they drank, they had to drink like maybe a bottle or two or three, and it had to be a drinking session. Yeah. But now it's changed. It changed a lot, and it also changed. I mean, this food culture also changed here because we have lots of also imported. The Asian cuisine has become very very popular here. Some other cuisines, as Italian cuisine, and all these fusions of Georgian cuisine also kind of spearheaded the changing and shifting of the wine culture as well, the drinking culture. So now it's really common for a younger generation to buy a bottle of wine and just to sip it for the dinner, which was really unusual in my parents' generation, for example. It was quite a different story.
Ellen, I want to finish with you, and we cannot, not mention the very obvious, the elephant in the room here, which is the pandemic that stopped global tourism in its track. I want to know, like, obviously you are frustrated, as we are all. Do you have any plans now? Are you trying actively now to focus on 2021, or are you still very cautious when it comes to reopening and accepting tourists, making any kind of programs, press tours, any kind of thing like that?
Well, we're of course having a big hope for the next year, and we are now from January starting to plan step by step the new projects and the campaigns and even the press and fam trips for the for summer. And we hope that everything is going to be okay till summer, and we're going to have the opportunity to reopen the borders and host the visitors again.
Well, thank you very much to both of you.
Thank you.
And I will just, I want to ask everyone and to our viewers to stay put for a few more minutes and watch the trailer for our documentary, Call It Amber. Thank you to both of you, and good night to Georgia.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
So you know what I discovered recently? Wines that people call white wines.
Wines are not just names on the list, they have histories, they have cultures.
Because they opened up like a different palette.
Each place has its own terroir, its own endemic varieties.
For me, amber wine means natural wine. Ne pa rečemo, tega tok, ker tudi veš približno, katero vino, zakaj boš rabil.
I like spiky, vibrant wines.
Rebula je tukaj pri nas čez 1000 let.
Je bilo to zelo težko prepričati ljudi, da sploh maceracija obstaja na belih vinah.
Yeah, it's different.
You can't do everything skin contact.
I love nature wines and I particularly enjoy amber wines.